Welcome to the Thrive Forever Fit Show. I am your host, Jay Nixon, and this show is all about disruption, inspiration, and transformation. My purpose and passion behind doing this show is to give you information, resources, and knowledge to help you move to the next level of life, to help you live that life of abundance and awesomeness that I know that you desire and I know you deserve. And so what we're going to do with each and every episode is bring you an action-packed, detailed oriented, systematic approach to living your best life. Now, today's episode is sponsored by Thrive Elite Greens. Thrive Elite Greens is the best tasting, most electrifying, immune boosting supplement on the market today. I use it every single day to break my fast. One serving provides you with 12 to 15 servings of fruits and vegetables. And if you're anything like me, you don't even get close to the amount of fruits and veggies that you need on a daily basis. All you have to do is go to thriveforeverfit.com, click the shop button, scroll down. You'll see the Elite Greens along with all the other supplements that I offer. I promise you it is delicious, nutritious, and amazing for your body and your immune system as a whole. We're coming into that time of year, that season where people start to get a little down in the dumps with their immune systems, sicknesses and illnesses and all of those things. So do everything you can to fortify that with the nutrients you need to make yourself as healthy as you can possibly be. All right, guys, let's get to the show. What is going on? Gorgeous, beautiful humans watching from all over the world. I want to just straight first and foremost, I appreciate you. I'm coming to you live today from Palm Springs, California, wherever you are in the world. I just want you to know that it is with extreme gratitude and thankfulness that you watch this show and you spend your time with me talking about various topics from mindset to transformation to optimization to all things that really matter in the grand scheme of us becoming the most evolved versions of ourselves. And today we're going to really dive deep into the streets, and we may end up in the weeds. And I really don't even know where this bad boy is going to go. Here's how this particular episode came to be. One of my fantastic private coaching clients sent me over a podcast clip where two very successful, very prominent ladies in our world were discussing communication and the lack of communication in the world that we live in today, the reasons behind that, and just some other, just their thoughts and beliefs. And the reason she sent it to me, she's like, hey, I'd like you to listen to this if you will, and then kind of give your, Jay Nixon perspective on, what your thoughts are around why there seems to be a lack of communication. So I listened to it, and man, wow. Like I've had to sit with it for a couple of days, just to be honest with you, just because of the depth and complexity of the thoughts that it elicited inside of me as to what's really going on. Like, why are we not able to communicate anymore? And I agree with my client who sent this over, and I agree with the two ladies who were having the conversation that we are in a, what I would call a communication deficit at this stage. And so you might be asking yourself right now, like, Jay, what does this matter? Like, why is this important? Well, let me touch on that first and foremost before we dive into my thoughts on where we are. Without communication, really, there is no connection. Without connection, there is no anything. And so it really affects you on a individual and in a social level, both from the perspectives of just your mindset and how you are navigating your daily routines. Because if you think about it, without connection, without communication, like really there's not much left. We're just kind of like meandering through life, hoping that we get to the right places and end up in the right places and spaces with the right people, doing the things that bring us the most value, whatever that value is for you. And if you really think about it, we've lost our ability, maybe even a little bit of our willingness to have deep levels of communication and deep levels of connection. And that's affecting you in ways that you may not even be aware of. For some of you guys, it's affecting you in your health, just your physical wellness, your nutrition and your movement and your activity is being affected by the lack of connection and lack of communication. And it's causing you to isolate and withdraw And then when you do get the opportunity to have a dialogue with another human, it's oftentimes not in the greatest fashion that leads to more internal chaos and more internal turmoil, which leads you back deeper into the hole of kind of self-despair and loneliness. And so the only way that you're really going to win as a human is by having high levels of connection and high levels of communication. You know, I often say, you know, the quality of your life will be predicated on the quality of the questions that you ask. Those questions are really just communication. And without connection, there is no communication. And so all of those things really kind of go hand in hand. So stay with me as we navigate today's show so that you can see maybe where you're leaving some of your success on the table. And success, I mean, relationship success, personal success, maybe economic success, maybe success in your job in the workplace, maybe if you're an entrepreneur and the things that it is that you're doing for yourself and for your family and for the world. There's a lot to be said about lack of communication and lack of connection. And I believe that, you know, just listening to this little snippet, and one of the things that they kept coming back to is that they felt that we were untethered as a society. Untethered basically meaning, you know, just not connected or free from any kind of anchor, you know, and the anchor being like love and trust and connection and all those things. I've said the word connection like 55 times already, and I'm probably going to say it 100 times more. And by the end, I think you'll start to see why I think that is such a powerful and a pivotal word. So instead of really diving into kind of what they talked about, I'm going to kind of just give my synopsis of where we are and how I think we can get to a better place, both individually, because I think that's really where it starts, right? We have to start on the individual level. And that's one of the situations that we're kind of in now is we're looking external for everything. We're looking external for solutions. We're looking external for problems. We're looking external to be told what to do. We're looking external for anything and everything. And in actuality, everything begins internally and then it extends externally. And so what we've got to do first and foremost is get connected to ourselves, begin to communicate again with ourselves, and begin to trust again in ourselves so that then we can go out into the world and make our social circles, you know, starting very small and granular and then growing those into the magnitude of which you have the ability to influence, where we can make those magnificent and awesome again. And so let's jump in, see what happens, right? So here are my thoughts on this is, after listening, I came up with these little bullet points, and I just said communication down. I put a downward arrow. Connection down. Trust down. Chaos, anxiety, and uncertainty up. So if you look at those, just those four things, right? With chaos, anxiety, and uncertainty being elevated, you can see why we are where we are. And that when you're in a chaotic state, when you're in an anxiety-ridden state, when you're in an uncertain state, your communication is naturally down. Your level of connection is naturally down because you're naturally withdrawn and in a protective like cocoon, if you will. Almost, I grew up in Texas, and when I thought of that, an armadillo just kind of popped into my brain of how they can curl up into a really protective ball and they just have armor on the outside. And then most importantly, and I think one of the things that maybe they touched on but didn't really give it the depth and the magnitude that I think it deserves is trust is down, right? And I'm going to really dive deeper into that because here's the scenario. In our current state, we're choosing chaos over communication, and without communication, there'll never be connection. And I know that's a powerful thing to say we're choosing chaos, but we have to understand that we're in charge of our decision-making processes on what we are going to allow in as an input, and then what we're going to then disseminate out as an output. And so we have to understand that we are choosing chaos. And yes, we may be in an external chaotic world, but that's why I started this conversation off saying that everything begins internally. And you're not going to find internal peace, internal connection, internal communication, and internal trust if you're consistently looking outward for someone or something to provide you those things first. And here's the situation: the lack of trust in anything, including ourselves right now, is what I perceive to be one of the largest problems. We're in a trust crisis right now, in a trust crisis with ourselves. Most of us don't even believe in ourselves. Most of us don't even believe what we believe anymore, or we're not even sure if we're supposed to believe it. And so that's where that breakdown in trust is creating a lack of communication and a lack of connection. If you really want to look at it from a simplistic fashion, there's two camps in the world right now. Camp one believes everything they hear and read. Camp two believes nothing that they hear and read. And sadly, both of those lead to more disconnection, more distrust, and a lack of communication. And so what we have to understand is, like, we don't have to be in these camps. Like, you don't have to believe everything you hear and read. You also don't have to disbelieve everything you hear and read. We've got to get back to some higher levels of evolved thinking and, deductive reasoning and asking questions of, like, well, why is that? As opposed to just getting pissed. Right now, we're in a world where when we hear something that we don't like, we just get pissed. It's like, I'm pissed now. Like, you don't even know why you're pissed. You're uncertain about why you're even mad. You just know you're mad, because mad is easy. Asking the question, why am I mad? And then getting the real answer for that, well, that's a whole different scenario. And that's what we've kind of got to get back to, is asking ourselves questions. Well, why? Why do I believe that? And or why do I not believe that? Number two is, we live in a soundbite society, right? And I'm not going to get ranty and ravey on my the disingenuousness. That is a massive word. I'm not even sure it's a word. Disingenuous. You know what I'm trying to say. You get it. But I'm not even going to get ranty on how I feel that, social media is really disingenuous. I'm just going to try to stick to the point of this, but we are in a soundbite society. Nobody can argue with that. We get and receive information in sound bites, right? There's no true dialogue or communication anymore, right? We really receive and we give our information in these little snippets. Twitter is, capital, and you can only use so many characters. Instagram, social media, like, that's how we're getting and receive. We get and receive information from memes. There are people in the world right now that get their daily news from a meme on the internet. That's hysterical and terrifying at the same time, because with lack of the exploration for information and just the acceptance of a meme being the be all end all, you're going to lose a lot of valuable insight and info in your perspective. And so you've got to be willing to move away from this soundbite society. You ask yourself this question: when was the last time that you had a really thoughtful conversation with another human? Not social media, not DMs, not text, not voice notes. Like, that's all replaced like real communication. Like, when was the last time you had a really thoughtful, like, exploratory conversation with another human? And being serious, ask yourself that question. Like, when was the last time? I bet it's been a while. The next thing is this, guys: we're choosing anger over appreciation. And a lot of this is really because of the soundbite society, right? Because when you're getting your information from a soundbite or from a meme or from a clip or from a headline, you really don't have any information. You really just have that little bit of you have a data point that doesn't tell the whole story on the end. You're not looking at the entire graph. You're not looking at the entire picture. You're only looking at a snippet or a pixel. And it's never going to give you enough information to be educated on, but it's going to give you enough information to be pissed off over. Now, won't it? How many of you guys have been pissed off over a meme? I'm assuming hands went up like crazy. How many of you guys have been pissed off over a soundbite or a clip or a headline, and you didn't even take the time to explore? You didn't have a conversation with somebody about that and get more information so you could be educated in your opinion of that. Well, all that aside, one of the other reasons that we're disconnected, like lack of connection, communication, and trust, is because we choose anger over acceptance, anger over appreciation right now. What I mean by appreciation is appreciation for just different perspectives. in the world, we're going to gain insight and knowledge and value from varying perspectives. The greatest conversations are often initiated by opposing opinions. But in the current times that we're living in, an opposing thought equals anger and attack, right? It doesn't elicit deep depth or engagement or, exploratory question asking. It elicits anger and attack. If you have an opposing thought or belief to what I believe, then you just have to hate me immediately, and you have to go on the attack. And it's kind of the world we're living in with that Soundbot Society I talked about. It's like the keyboard cowboys. Like, it's really easy to attack somebody on social media. A little bit off topic, but Lori came into my office this morning and she was laughing, but she's like, "Babe, you're not going to believe this." She's like, "I posted a picture yesterday of me." If you guys don't know, my significant other, Lori, is an esthetician by trade. So she had tinted her eyebrows, which women, more about this than me, but it's like, I guess it's like dyeing your eyebrows so that they're all the same color. Tinted her eyebrows, and she still had the tint on her eyebrows. And she took a picture, and she deals with estheticians all over the country and all over the world in her business coaching academy. And it had something to do with, taking self-care and, them taking the time to, take care of themselves and not just their clients. She got attacked on the internet for being ugly, for being ridiculous. And if you guys have ever seen my significant other, she's absolutely gorgeous. I mean, I outkicked my coverage by a mile. I mean, she is one of the most beautiful women that I've ever seen in my life. So for anybody to say that she's ugly, it is just a foolish thing to say. So it just goes back. It really anchors home my point of, if you see something that just irritates you, you just start to attack people. But she got attacked for tinting her eyebrows and posting a photo of it on a business professional page. It was the craziest. And she was laughing about it. She took it kind-heartedly, because we both understand that, like, we are living in this world right now of chaos and keyboard cowboys, but it was just insane the amount of people that were attacking her. And then once one person attacked her, it was like this herd mentality of everybody else started piling on. And then, of course, people love her as much as I do, and they started coming to her defense. And it was an entire shit show on a Facebook page because a human tinted their eyebrows. Holy shit, right? Like, that's insane. That's insanity. That anybody, would ever say anything mean to another human on the internet because they tinted their eyebrows. But just to say mean things to people on the internet is such a low level of existence anyway. Like, I've never in my life have I said something mean, rude, or anything other than kindness and love and appreciation to anybody on Facebook or Instagram or any of the other social media platforms. My mind just doesn't work that way to think in terms of, gosh, I'm going to attack another human that either I know or don't know. But it's become so easy for us. And it's because we're living in this anger over acceptance, in this anger over appreciation world. And we've really got to get out of it. Right. And there's this other thing about, like, taking these polarizing stances on social media, because polarization equals positioning, and positioning gets you more likes and more clicks and more comments and more conversions. And in the world that we live in of meta, everything is conversionary, right? Well, it shouldn't be. It should be connection and communication and trust and love and all of those key words that we have to figure out a way to really get back to if we're going to heal anything and everything that needs to be healed. And then lastly, before I jump into kind of some of my solutions, it's fear. Like, if you think about the way we're behaving, right? Like lack of communication, lack of connection, lack of trust, it's because of the fear cycle that we're in and that we have been in for over the last 2 years. When human beings are kept in fear, kept in chaos, they lose connection and they lose communication, because their natural self-preservation mechanism is to withdraw and protect, to go within and protect, right? The brain actually goes into a survival phase, and it starts to look for problems. It starts to look for things to be fearful of, as opposed to looking for things to love and appreciate and things for solutions. And I'll prove this to you by asking you a simple question. Think about the last time that you were scared or afraid or in fear. How did you communicate? Did you communicate at a really high level? Like, were you super articulate? Were you connected to that person that you were having that conversation with? Or do you not even remember what you said? Right. And most of you can kind of probably like go back to the last like argument or conflict you got with someone that you even love. You don't even remember why you said what you said or what you said, right? After it's all said and done, because your brain shuts off and you lose your ability to effectively communicate at a high level. And you're definitely not connected when you're yelling and fearful and scared, right? And there's actually a lack of trust, right? It all comes back to those three things, like lack of trust, lack of communication, lack of connection. And so, you know, in listening to that podcast again, like my client sent over, I mean, these were the things that came to my brain, and it might've been a little bit of a deviation from kind of what she was thinking. But again, that's the beauty of like perspective and how we're all so vastly different, but also vastly uniquely the same. Can you be vastly uniquely the same? That may not make any sense, but I have a feeling if you listen to my show, you know exactly what I'm trying to say. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And that's what I appreciate about you guys is you let me show up here, just be me. I get to make up words. I get to say shit that's grammatically incorrect. I get to rant. I get to rave. I get to just be myself. And I appreciate you guys allowing me to be that. And I have an immense amount of gratitude for you, for your appreciation of me. And I just want to say thank you for that before we jump into my solutions, right? So I'm going to give you 5 solutions that I think would get us back to a higher level of trust, higher level of connection. And then I think that would transition into a higher level of communication, which is really what we've got to get to, right? Without communication, like what do we got? We have nothing, you know what I mean? And so my first one is this. It is believing and trusting in yourself again. Remember how I said lack of trust? If there's lack of trust, you can't communicate and you definitely can't connect. So you got to believe in yourself again. You got to believe and trust in yourself again. You're smart. Like you're intelligent. Like you've got answers. You've got solutions. You've got the resources and the knowledge inside of you to know what's right, to know what's wrong, to know what you might need to question a little bit more deeply, when you need to ask questions, when you need to listen. You know all those things. You're awesome at that. You've got those abilities inside of you. And what this will do is this will lead to you trusting others, because if we can't trust and connect to ourselves, then we can't trust and connect to other people. So this is why I go back to that internal thing first, right? You have to internally get reconnected to yourself. You have to internally get realigned. You have to get connected and start communicating with yourself again, like a high level of self-awareness, high level of self-trust, right? Because if you'll do this, this will actually give you the ability to meaningfully connect with other people. And this will lead to better communication. Number 2, and this is going to shock some people, but you have to know that just because you believe something doesn't make it the truth. That goes for me too. Just because I believe something does not make it the truth. So we have to ask ourselves a lot of questions, right? We can't just question everybody else. We've got to question ourselves sometimes and say, Jay, why do you believe that? What resources do you have that validate your belief in that perspective? That's a really powerful question to ask yourself. And it's a really evolved state to be in. If you can pause and ask yourself those questions and not just think because you believe it, it must be true. Because that means if somebody else doesn't believe it, then they must be wrong. And it's usually never that cut and dry. There's usually 3 perspectives. There's usually your perspective, their perspective, and then the truth somewhere down the middle. And so just know that just because you believe it doesn't mean it's true. That'll help you in a lot of phases in life. He'll keep you out of a lot of those anger, agitated feelings that you get when someone has a different perspective than you. It'll also help you be more accepting of others and understand that through the acceptance that other people might have a different opinion than you do, you might get into some fantastically amazing conversations that lead you to a brand new perspective, not necessarily their perspective, but maybe a brand new perspective on what you already even thought. It might even anchor more deeply what you've thought, or it might even send you in a completely different direction. And holy shit, wouldn't any of those be cool? Aren't any of those better than the alternative of just getting pissed and angry because somebody believes something you don't believe? like it's okay to not agree on everything. And it's completely unnecessary to have to hate anybody or be mad at somebody because they don't. The third thing is you have to make a point to have real conversations daily, not social media, not text, and not, I was having a little bit of this conversation the other day with somebody. It's not just show up and throw up. I'm talking about real back and forth dialogue. Here's where we're at with some of the ways that we're feeling. We're so disconnected right now that when we get the opportunity to see another human and possibly have what would naturally be a conversation, we just show up and throw up. And this happens to me a lot. A lot of people will talk to me and it's like they just throw up on me, meaning they don't even give me a chance to interject or intertwine in that conversation that could be really dynamic and amazing, but they're so wound up tight like a yo-yo that they just show up and throw up. So what we have to do is we have to just calm down a little bit and understand that connection and communication isn't you just doing all the talking. There's a lot more listening than talking that goes on. But if there's a high level of dialogue, like a back and forth transference of information and energy and perspectives and question asking and ideas and details, I mean, that makes for such a fantastic interaction. And that leads to higher levels of depth and higher levels of the three: connection, communication, and trust. And that's what we really have to get down to. The fourth thing is this: you have to appreciate unique thoughts of others. This kind of goes a little bit with the one I just gave you a while ago, but you have to appreciate the uniqueness of other people because you're unique to them just like they're unique to you. Think about that for a second. Your perspective is unique to them just as unique as their perspective is to you. And so if you want to be accepted and appreciated and heard, then you're going to need to accept, appreciate, and hear other people. Right? And you don't always need to get angry when someone has a different perspective than you. They're allowed to do that. We're allowed to be vastly different. It's okay. The next thing is we have to stop choosing chaos over compassion. Attacking someone on social media is literally the lowest level of involvement that you could ever exhibit as a human. Like, it has zero value. It actually has a negative value in the perspective of the world. And you're not bringing any higher levels of thinking, higher levels of involvement, and you're actually damaging yourself because it's anchoring home your chaos. It's anchoring home your internal strife and struggle. It's anchoring home your internal anxiety, because we're not meant to attack each other. We're not meant to be horrible to each other. We're not meant to be mean to each other. And the fact that you're doing that is just a red flag to you that you've got to get some control over your own internal belief systems and your internal love and self-awareness and communication. And lastly is this: we have to step out of the fear cycle. We really do. We just have to step out of it. And it's that, I want you to think about it that metaphorically. Think about being in a bubble and simply just stepping outside of that bubble. And I'm going to say the thing that everybody doesn't like it when I say it, but you got to stop watching the news. You at least have to stop being addicted to the news. The news doesn't need to be on 24/7, 365 in your home, right? If it is, it's damaging your perspective to see things differently. You have to stop living on social media, right? You have to stop believing that everything that doesn't agree with your current perspective needs to be hated. You have to understand that that's not the way that the world is designed. It's okay that we think differently than each other. We can still love each other and vastly and vehemently disagree. That's the beauty of our ability as a human, but we're not acting in a very evolved state at the current moment. So step out of the fear cycle, start having dialogue and communication with humans on a daily basis. Communication again, right? Not chaos, communication, connection, and trust. Without those three things, and without trust, first and foremost, we're not going to get back to a high level of connection. And without a high level of connection, our communication is always going to stay at a very low level. So my hope for you for this particular episode is that you go internal. You stop looking external for the answers and the resources, because you've got them. I promise you do. Go internal, get reconnected to you. Start communicating with yourself again. Start asking yourself questions again. Start having dialogue with yourself again, and build that trust back in yourself that you are a highly evolved being and you've got the ability to be, do, and have anything in this world that you want. I truly believe that. And I want you to believe that in and of yourself. My desire for you is abundance and awesomeness, and to live a life that I said this on a coaching call yesterday. How many of you guys get up and are so overwhelmed with just happiness and enthusiasm at the life that you get to live? I truly live that way. Every day I get up and I am just elated that I get to live this particular life. I feel so grateful and so blessed. And that's what I hope that I can transfer a little bit over into you by just listening to this simple podcast. So I'll leave you with this. Be kind and be awesome to each other. Love yourself, and let's do what we can do to get reconnected and to start a higher level of communication again. Guys, I truly appreciate you. Like I said earlier, I am immensely grateful that you spend this time listening to me rant and rave, and massive gratitude for you. Love you, appreciate you, and I'll be back very soon with another episode. Be cool to yourself, be kind to each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.